Well, shalom, shalom to all of our wonderful ethereal life participants. How are you doing, Elisa?
I am doing great, very well. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. So it's been a while since we've had an ethereal life conversation. So we're back and we're better than ever. So I'm
Yes,
excited.
yes, it's excited to be back.
I think we've grown light years. I don't know. What did we take a back?
Yes, we actually did. Yeah, there were some things that we actually were working on our journey in getting things, just working on ourselves. But yeah, we took a little break from the recording and so forth, and it was all good.
Yeah, it was. I have to say that for me personally, I grew literal lifetimes in that short time, that short span. I really feel like I jumped timelines. I mean, all kinds of stuff. I mean, next level. We definitely
Mm-hmm.
went to a new and exciting place and overstanding, our origins, overstanding our journey, overstanding our purpose. It was profound, and I am eternally grateful.
Yes.
So I give thanks. So we jumped back in. We talked. I don't know how long ago, maybe a month or so, or maybe longer, about getting back into recording, and kind of in an impromptu fashion. Today, boom, we just jumped right back in. So
Exactly.
with that being the case, I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you kind of set the stage for where we go from here.
Yes. So, in thinking about what was being discussed even earlier, and the super spirituality was the thing that really, the topic that kind of really caught my attention and made me think about where, our super spirituality in that, what the real origin and the reason why that term was used and discussed on both sides of the coin, meaning, oh, there's not, no, there's no such thing as super spirituality, or there shouldn't be that super spirituality. And yet, their super spirituality is something that we really are, but it's our natural origin. That was what I was thinking. And because of the fact that we were so, and I'll say this now that we know, dumbed down, as opposed to um uh in our what we were told was our origin, that we came from Homo sapien erectus, and then we were upgraded that to the Homo sapien that we are today, that is not necessarily true. And that was the reason why I felt that that would be a good topic to discuss, because it takes us back to what our true origin is, and discussing our high level of spirituality or super spirituality, as opposed to what we would call the super spirituality, which in the 3D realm would be the from the standpoint of self-righteousness, or how can I say it, that that we're playing small in terms of our, or no, I'm sorry, we're playing big-headed or super spiritual in terms of that, where, and that's those such things. So those were the things that I thought that would make this ethereal life conversation. And you're muted if you're talking.
I had background noise, and so thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Hmm.
So what I want to do is I want to put what you've just said into context, because if someone was listening for the first time, or someone has just gotten back with us after a time, they may not really fully understand what you were saying. So in the context that I would like to add to it was the whole concept of a Homo sapien versus a Homo erectus. Um, the There are basically multiple schools of thought about human origin. And it really breaks down into two basic, schools of thought, but then there's subsets in each one of those. So if we were going to say, what are the two primary schools of thought of human origin? It's either we are divine, and we came into existence from the eternal one, and have been highly evolved, if you want to use that term, from the beginning, versus the evolutional theory, where we evolved from primates.
Hmm.
So either we started off perfect, or we started off as apes and we evolved to where we are right now, if you want to use the term Homo sapien, or sapien. Um, and that's going to be a huge debate. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and say, with that as a starting point, were we created perfect, or did we evolve? That's the question. So, and I'm sure there are plenty of people on both sides of that question. I'm going to throw my little, 2 cents into that debate as we start off. I believe that we are created beings, that were created by the creator of all, and that we do go through uh cycles of growth. So when people say, well, we've evolved over time, well, we've gone through cycles of growth. Yeah, definitely. I've gone through cycles of growth, but I still started off, when I came into my knowledge of my current cycle of existence. I was born a human. I was born into this realm, into this cycle, with all of the faculties that I currently have. And I have grown over the cycle and gotten further and deeper understanding. So now I'm going to take it a little bit more technical and scientific. The question is, in that growth cycle, was I always 12 strand DNA, or was I two-strand DNA, and I'm trying to grow back to my original settings? So that right there, I'm sure would get a lot of people involved in the conversation, if they even know, anything about 12 strand DNA versus two-strand DNA. But the that's the question. The question is, who are we? Where did we come from? How did we get here? And what is our purpose? What do you think, Elizabeth?
Well, I definitely think that most or a lot of people, not everybody, but more than likely, that people do know that they've been born at this time is and with two-strand DNA. That's something that I've been hearing almost all my life. Um, that we have two-strand DNA and that we also have junk DNA. And the junk DNA, um, well, we were told that it was junk DNA because it wasn't described. There wasn't any type of meaning that was given to it and what it really represented. So for me, it was in terms of our origin and who we are as originally having 12 strand DNA. Yes, that was that's our original setting that we have, but it was capped. Um, and we were told it was junk DNA, that it had no purpose, it had no reason. And that in itself um, takes me out of the uh, realm of thinking that I was upgraded and came from a Homo sapien erectus and evolved, because the question would be is did the Homo sapien erectus literally have 12 strand DNA? And I would think that it did not. But but I haven't done the research on that. But just in thinking that I came already equipped with 12 strand DNA and it's been lying dormant and I was told it was junk, that just lets me know I came equipped.
Well, you know, that's a conversation that we're going to have to really have some real scientific discovery done and bring that to the table, because right now we're just talking about our opinions. But I would say that the situation is, were we created beings, or were we engineered beings? Because see, that's what we're talking about. I mean, we haven't brought up, the Anunnaki. We haven't brought up, Enki and Enlil
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. But you know, that's kind of what we're tiptoeing around. There's a school of thought out here that we were born or brought into this realm as created beings, who were created by a eternal being. We can say God, or we can say, some creator being that created the human, and then put us on the earth to be fruitful and multiply. That kind of takes a biblical narrative. But then those who say that extraterrestrials came here, multiple extraterrestrials came here. But, we're talking about one group specifically that we can find record of in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets that were called the Anunnaki. Those from heaven to earth came, those who from heaven to earth came. And we see throughout many, many different, groups of people all around the world, from the Dogon in Africa, to various different cultures in Mesoamerica, that they were documented beings that uh, came to this planet, entered this realm with higher technology than some of the beings that were already here. Okay. And, they have had interaction with the earthlings, if you want to use that term, for m- many, many years. You know, I mean, we're finding more and more information. Archaeologists are finding, bones and skeletons and information that can be carbon dated back thousands of years, 60, 70, 80, 100,000 years ago. And even are finding things that they carbon date back to, 1 million years, So there's more and more information coming forth to say that this story that we are exploring in this conversation is a very intense and very deep story, because we can find information. Okay, now those would argue that information real or not, but I would say that what we're finding in the cuneiform tablets, and which has been dug up many years ago but kind of hidden from the public in secret archives, is coming forward and letting us know that there's recorded history that gives us a different vantage point than what we get from what I call traditional mainstream education and mainstream media. So, it's hard to discount uh, a written record, you know. And now with AI and other technologies, these tablets can be easily read. You don't need a quote unquote specialist. Now you can take the known translation information, load it into an AI computer, and now that AI computer can read things that, you know, other people had spent years and years and years to try to decipher. Now, in a matter of minutes or seconds, it can be read and analyzed and cross referenced from different time periods. So, the pictures are becoming more and more clear. So I believe, and that's after a fairly um, good amount of research and investigation, that these various extraterrestrial beings that we see glimpses of in modern day. I mean, the Congress just had a big meeting about UAPs, and with a lot of Air Force aviators, you know, testifying under oath before Congress that they've seen these UAPs, zipping through our airspace and doing maneuvers that they can't even hardly explain, that far surpass our current, military capabilities. So, more and more information is coming out, and they call it disclosure, and in this disclosure, it's being been made very clear that there are other intelligent beings that have advanced farther than we have, which makes it easier for us to look back and see, okay, now we recognize that the story we were given about how the pyramids were built. They show you, a bunch of slaves, rolling these big granite blocks up the side of a pyramid. Ridiculous. You can look at it now and say it didn't make sense then, and it surely doesn't make sense now. So, I think as more information becomes disclosed, we can start to recognize that, okay, this is no longer mythology. This can be looked at through a different lens. And, when you look at it through a different lens, when you look at it through the lens of history versus the lens of mythology, you start to see it differently. What do you think?
Well, I too think that also that looking at it through history and it would be his story, but and they made it into mystery as far as because it was a lot of it was hidden from us. The disclosures and everything else that's going on, you know, the government's declassifying all the Area 51 documents, I'll call it that for now, in terms of the alien beings and that were on there. But what to me is relevant as far as when it comes to thinking about the aliens, the Anunnaki, and all of that, and how we relate to them is the fact that in some ways that they have all of there's so many things that are coming out about as to who we are as as human beings, that even the fact that technically um, what is being shown and spoken about not necessarily mainstream, but the fact that what our genetic makeup is, our energetic as well as our energetic makeup, and what that consists of. And when it comes to thinking about the level now, as far as how the stories and the uh, research and the withheld research and information and the records that have been withheld that's told the story, that was able to tell the story. I am glad that AI is able to actually read those records that have been tucked away and hidden in different areas and so forth, you know, different museums, but to allow us to get a better perspective as to who we are. Because yes, the technology, the advanced technology we that um of the other beings that were here, you know, that was one of the that was that they, I'll say, shared with us, is that they had the advanced technology, but the government, you know, it's known pretty much known that the government hid the fact that these alien beings were giving technology or sharing technology with the government and doing exchanges. And they showed us in movies and how they actually work in terms of different movies that have come out where you can see the alien beings are working with, um, like, say, for instance, Men in Black. That was to me a very good movie that illustrated how the alien beings were working in conjunction with um, the humans, or in these underground, what I've now found out, these are underground laboratories and bases that the government has. And I'm getting that information from the fact that um, David Wilcox on Gaia had interviewed um, a couple people that were people that actually worked in these underground bases, at these underground bases, and were working directly with the alien beings and autopsying them and working alongside of some of them, because there's at least 20 some alien beings and so forth. So, but with that,
Are you
that,
saying 20 different species or
yeah,
20 individuals of one species?
no, 20 different species.
Okay.
Of yeah, you have the insectoids, you have the tall whites, the grays, the reptilians. There's all different types of species. Um, so that was something that I actually have watched those videos and seen those, and they're you know very good to watch those interviews and that he has actually conducted. They're recorded, um, but there's things that there's the energetic life, the spirit life, the spark. The interest is that we have a spark in us with it that's given us life. This is that's what makes us of interest. It makes us living, and we have the capacity of free will. We have a different makeup. We have here, so we're just of uh on this planet we're of interest, but we've been all this information is just coming out, and everyone is going to know, and that's the good part. So I'm gonna
Well,
leave it there.
okay. Well, I mean, I think that we've been in a time of disclosure for a while, and it's accelerating because of the various technologies that we have. People might not realize how powerful all of the information is that comes through something like TikTok. You know, when you start looking at, YouTube was really the first really big, media push to bring where the individual can now have their own television program, and YouTube made that possible. Before then, the media was controlled, and you had, three outlets. You had ABC, NBC, CBS, and maybe PBS or something of that nature. But those were all very centralized. With YouTube, it became decentralized, and then that just continued to grow through social media, then through TikTok, and so now information abounds, and it can't be filtered, it can't be contained, it can't be manipulated as much, even though they still try. But the information is getting out now, and as the information gets out, the consciousness is starting to rise. Now the consciousness is being fueled by Gaia herself, starting to emit different energies and frequencies and vibrations. Gaia being another word for the earth itself. The earth itself is transmitting and breaking free of some different external dampening fields that have been employed to keep Gaia's energy at bay. But Gaia's energy is on the rise. And then our energy, as those who inhabit Gaia, is on the rise. And it can't be held back anymore. You know, we recognize that everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. You know, everything comes from and everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. So, with that being the case, this thing is vibrating apart, and there's nothing that can be done to stop it. So, the earth herself, and and the inhabitants thereof are starting to elevate. Now, it's interesting as we start to
I,
go back and,
I
oh,
want to
yeah.
just real quick. When I said mentioned, just to be clear, when I mentioned that David Wilcox was on Gaia, because some people may not know who might be listening to this, it's a program that now is airing on it streams. It's a streaming platform um, that's out there, but it's Gaia is known for the science and uh, different types of uh, podcasts on that or streaming podcasts. And this has been going on for a little bit, but yeah, just to be clear. And then there's the Gaia that means Earth. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got multiple platforms out here that stream information, and all of that is helping to elevate the consciousness, because the more information that we receive from various different sources, and some of them are just sensationalism, but a lot of it is real solid, peer reviewed information, and a lot of it is, leaks and other information that has come, that the government has tried to withhold from the population. But whether it comes from a leak, whether it comes from a podcast, or whether it comes from a combination of the two, the information is getting out there, and people are starting to recognize that they don't have to be afraid. The real key here is, there's a statement that, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. We should be walking in a spirit of gratitude, and a spirit of love, and a spirit that knows that everything works out for us. All things work together for good. And as long as we stay in that positive vibration, regardless of what we see, because there's a lot of people in that same and I don't want to this to turn into government bashing. The government is not bad, but there are bad people in the government. So we have to just know that if we want good government, then we have to participate in making it good government. The government can only do what it's allowed to do. When the people sit back and don't get involved, then the government can go to the left. But as long as as we the people get involved, and we the people don't allow certain things, then certain things won't happen. We are the power, and we have the power. And then I'll stop right there.
Yes, that's a good point, because that to me takes us back to the our DNA, who we are, the story, the narrative that we were given, that we came from, um, Homo sapien erectus, and that's something that why were we giving that statement? Why were we giving that? And thinking about the government with when people were telling of their stories about their interactions with UAPs and UFOs, that the government was the one that was squashing it, and they came up with the term conspiracy theorists. So to make those people who or people who were telling the stories and telling their truth, that's a conspiracy, that no longer. And it for me, it goes back to the fact that in order the reason why we're to me that we're told these stories is because we have a higher frequency. We are that 12 strand DNA, and it was about control and power, and that throughout humanity's lifespan, that it was all for the few and the powerful to control the many. And that to me was to me that's the running theme throughout. But now it's to the point where there's they're losing power because we are the many, but they don't want us to know how to use our power, to control things to make life better, because if for the all, I mean, that's what this is all about. That they did not, they wanted to make life better for themselves and not the all. And that to me is a running theme, and that is for me what I think in terms of um, why we were giving all these stories all this time, as to having junk DNA, having to question who we are, having to question or being told that, oh, that's a conspiracy, that's not true, and everything else, or, and that was, that to me is a very interesting dynamic to really come to, for me to come to that realization. That's my comment.
Okay. Well, while you were, hello?
Yes, I'm
Can you
here.
hear? Oh, okay. All
Mhm.
right. While you were making that comment, I went to my one of my favorite resources, which is what is this? Perplexity. Okay. And so I put in information about Homo sapiens and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of gave me a breakdown. And what I really find interesting is it says that the Homo sapien, based on archaeological evidence, has been around for 2 to 300,000 years. That's that just puts it in perspective. You can't even take a biblical narrative of 7,000 years seriously when you've got archaeological evidence that just shows a Homo sapien. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna read it directly from, not to say that perplexity is the end all be all, but it says the current view is that our species emerged roughly 300,000 years ago from population spread across Africa, not from one single tiny location. So that just puts the time frames into perspective, right? And then so I said, because you had the Homo erectus, and then the Homo sapien, and then the Homo sapien sapien. So, but then it goes back and it says modern humans, Homo sapiens, did not appear out of nowhere. This is the term they use. We evolved from earlier members of the human family tree, mainly in Africa. There are main groups that came before us. And then they start breaking all of that down. But they are talking about that they were groups that lived ape-like, but walked upright, that lived roughly 4 to 2 million years ago, and are thought to be close in lineage, that led to our genus, which was the Homeo genus. And then it says early Homeo genus, okay, uh, used simple stone tools, lived around 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago. So what I'm basically saying is, when we start looking at the Homeo erectus, bigger brain, used fire and more complex tools, lived from about 1.9 million to maybe 100,000 years ago. And who's to say if all this is true or not? But the reason that I bring it up, and the reason that I want to do that little quick research, is that we have got to start to recognize that the information that we've been given throughout society, that bases everything on a 7,000 year cycle, 6 to 7,000 year cycle, is so far away from verifiable truth, then it's ridiculous, right? So so now when we start looking at what they want to call mythology and how there were beings that from heaven to earth came, and those beings even measured their time frames in SARS, and a SARS like 3,500 or 3,600 years, their whole measurement system is different. When you start reading the Sumerians kings list, and kings ruled for, you know, 30, 40,000 years before the next king came up, you start to say, wait a minute, now we've been lied to. We've been given a narrative that, you know, those who gave the narrative have all the information, have had contact with other beings. They just, we have to break the veil. We've been lied to, okay? And it's okay because everything happens as it should. But we have to accelerate now because time is short, okay? All of this is happening within a very compressed window. And we no longer have the ability to say, "Oh yeah, we got all the time in the world." Nah, nah, we don't have all the time in the world. So we got to start getting ourselves together here with a quickness, because there are things that are happening that we need to be aware of, and the only way to be able to see beyond the veil is you have to elevate your consciousness away from the lies, the deceptions, and start to embrace the disclosure. And, it's not hard. You just have to let go of a lot of traditional thought processes. That's all. So, yeah, I just shared that information about the various, you know, uh, different groups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Homo erectus, basically lived from about 1.9 million to more than 100,000 years ago. And, from the quote unquote Homo erectus came the Homo sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
And it just continues to go from there. But we're talking in scientific terms of hundreds of thousands and millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
So that just breaks the whole 6 7,000 year uh narrative. Right, it just snaps it right in half. So that's all I want to say.
Hey, I think that that was very good, but at the same time, it also is able to. I'm also able to kind of put the timeline together from like the dates of the Sumerian tablets and their dating, as well as the fact that with these timelines, because if not if, but because the fact is that those that timeline existed so long ago that to me, yes, 12 strand DNA, we came with it already equipped. And that would say, and that to me now, I can say that we're tampered with and um, downgraded.
Absolutely. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when they say that they capped the telomeres, to cap something means to cut it off. That means it already existed, and they tried to sever and cap something. So we were already divine. We were already something that was amazing. We were something that was observed and seen and saying, wow, that's incredible, right? Let's go down and tamper with it. And because we're dealing with, and I want to be clear about this part too. Those that came from somewhere else to here were not benevolent. They weren't coming here to do us any favors. Okay. They were coming here to make slaves, to mine mineral resources and to mine energetic resources because they were being opportunistic. Okay. And so, we got to recognize that we were already divine. We were already of the 12 strand DNA, and those, it was capped. Okay. It was tampered with, it was genetically engineered and modified so that we would not be free to roam freely about the cosmos. It was like, oh, no, 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 we're going to literally make this into a prison planet, and we want to stop the ability of those naturally, wonderfully powerful, beings. They came with their own torsion fields and their own abilities to resonate at high frequencies. We've got to, if we want to make a workforce out of these beings, we're going to have to modify them. And then, I was listening to something earlier this morning, and what I'm beginning to recognize, because it takes time, and let me give a public service announcement. All of this takes time. If you're hearing some of this for the first time, do not be alarmed. It takes time to start to know all the characters, to, when we start talking about the Anunnaki is a general term, it really represents a lot of different species. But when we start talking about Inky, Enlil, and Anu, that's a specific, group that was highly involved in the development of humans on Earth. And
Underdevelopment.
yeah, underdevelopment for real. So when you start to hear these things, we want you to be aware that, okay, this is information that you can easily verify. And it's a lot of it's tucked away in various museums in England and Germany and the Smithsonian and other places all around the world, in Iran and Iraq. So
University of Pennsylvania.
yeah, yeah, it's spread around and verifiable. So with that being said, if you're new to this, don't worry. Take your time and just, allow yourself, be kind and gentle with yourself. Give yourself time to acclimate to some of this because it's out of this world, literally and figuratively. So that's all I wanted to interject.
Yes, I agree 100%. But the biggest piece is that for me is that this is a spiritual journey. It's something that um actually is very exciting um to actually be on this journey, but you have to be open-minded and to know that everything works out. It's and to go within, actually really to go within, follow your gut and find out everything that you possibly can, because it's very exciting. This information comes to shock comes at a shock to some, um but at the same time it can also come as a relief to know. So that's my perspective.
And it's funny to me how much they show us. You brought up the MIB,
Mm-hmm.
and they show you a lot in movies. If you really want, if you
They
really
show
want to
you.
know what's going on, um, I mean, I was just talking to somebody day before yesterday about how we don't even realize, like, iRobot is over 20 years old. But Elon Musk is about to unleash iRobot on the world, you know? And that was a movie. But hey, it's about to be our reality here in no time at all, you know? I
And
mean, and it's not just Elon Musk. I mean, it's others, that are the technology race right now on the surface is AI. But the real race is humanoid robots. So, and trust me, by 2028, 2020, well, now in China, they got humanoid robots walking around in the city. But in the US, by 2027, we're going to be dealing with humanoid robots in a big way, and that's literally, if you want to know what that looks like, just go watch the movie iRobot. It literally shows you exactly what we can expect in 2027. So that was a sidebar, but
and that's something that I wanted to bring up, that meaning they have to let us know. These movies are letting us know in advance, and they have to get our consent. This is a subtle way in which they get our consent. If this is okay, if there's no pushback, it's, we go for it. And even though they put it out there as entertainment, to us it is entertainment because we haven't seen it before. But the reality is, and speaking of the movies, that I literally was speaking with someone yesterday that um is about to reenact Iron Man in terms of the computer part scene, where he was in front of his computer. He got up in the morning, where Iron Man got up in the morning, went to his computer where he had multi screens in front of him, and he spoke to each screen, his AI agent or AI skill, and told them to give a report and give them his update, what he has on his list. Every to each separate screen he gave different commands to. And had another, speaking of robot in the scene, had another robot preparing his coffee. It was just a mechanical arm in the movie. And this movie was about out back in the 80s, I believe, or something like that. And so now we have this now, where people, or at least I know this brother who actually is going to create, has all the multiple screens, 9 of these monitors. And when I say screens, these are the screens, the computer screens, the computer monitors, all lined up, stacked on top of each other, has all his AI agents and AI skills that he actually talks to, and it reports back to it by the same name and voice. Jarvis was the AI voice that was used in Iron Man. You can go on another, that voice is still being used to this day. So yeah, this is it's very interesting that yes, they have to disclose to us what the future is, or what, because they need our consent, because there's a lot of other universal laws that and galactic laws that have to be followed. And that's a whole story for a whole another day. But I did want to bring that up because it was just yesterday that this whole Iron Man galactic, yeah, Iron Man scene is being literally recorded and played by someone today who's doing exactly the same thing. And back then, when Iron Man did it, it was a mind blower thing. Like, how's that possible? How can a computer talk back to you or give you a report? How can there be a robotic arm that pours your coffee? So that was the point.
Yeah, it's all happening. Just 20 plus years of warning. And it's really fun to use for entertainment. Exactly what you're doing. It is entertainment
Mm,
and
mic
good
drop right there.
entertainment. But what they really, yeah, it's all being in,
Wait, you're
in-
breaking up a little bit. Your mic is breaking up.
oh, okay. I want to see. Oh, I see. I, let me. I'm gonna go on mute for a second, and I'll.
Yeah, because it's garbled. Yeah, that intercontainment, that was a mic drop right there, as far as when it comes to how they and it's like television, if they're telling us a vision, but they have to tell us, but we never realize that the entertainment aspect of it is that they are telling us a vision, but it's from an entertainment so that we can contain this internally. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're giving them some things to think about because we've had to go through the process and recognize that. Wait a minute now, they've been telling us the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
and we have not taken it as seriously as we needed to. But we recognize, and that's one of the reasons for the podcast, as we start to recognize, wait a minute, this has been told to us for 20, 30, 40 years. And we just sat around, took it all in. We were intercontained, but we did not make a move. Now we're taking action and we're sharing because we know that, wait a minute now, if the time clock was ticking 30, 40 years ago, how much time do we have left? You know? And we're watching a lot of things like Jarvis, like iRobot, like Men in Black, all coming into fruition right in front of our face. And Men in Black is deep because it showed the cooperation between extraterrestrials and the government. And how many years ago did that come out?
Oh my goodness, that was I'll have to Google that. And now Google's going AI.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything is going AI. AI is literally has changed the game. So, with all of that being said, I think that we've covered a lot. I don't know how long. How long has the recording been going for?
I haven't kept track, but yes, we did cover a lot in terms of there was for us to be on the comeback in terms of getting back into the swing of things. Yes, it just shows that in our absence and while we were away, we have been able to cover a lot of ground, and we are absolutely looking forward to sharing as much as possible um, about this whole journey that we have, the information that was gathered, and to allow us to actually be able to bring new awareness to and perspective to all of this. So yeah, I think it's wonderful.
I do, I do. It's always, a pleasure to share and to expound upon things and go back and forth with you. And now to share you with the rest of the world is my divine pleasure. So let's go.
Okay.